year is 1875, and the air in London's financial district hums with the clink of coins and the rustle of banknotes, a symphony of ambition that drowns out the cries of empire. The Suez Canal, a marvel carved through Egypt's Sinai Peninsula in 1869, has just changed the world, linking the Mediterranean to the Red Sea and slashing the journey from Britain to its prized Indian Raj. No longer must ships brave the treacherous Cape of Good Hope to reach Asia's riches, as the Times heralded the canal's opening as the greatest triumph of engineering. But Britain's grip on this waterway is shaky, and the Suez Canal Company shares are a golden ticket to control. Enter Benjamin Disraeli's conservative government, desperate to secure a stake, and the N.M. Rothschild and Sons banking house, stepping from the shadows with a £4 million loan, hundreds of millions in today's dollars. Per The House of Rothschild by Niall Ferguson, you stand in their opulent London office, the scent of polished mahogany and ink heavy, as Nathan Rothschild's heirs seal a deal that cements Britain's imperial dominance, establishing a protectorate over Egypt by 1882, as the Economic History of Britain by Roderick Floud confirms. This is no mere transaction. It's the pulse of the Rothschild dynasty, a Jewish family whose wealth shapes empires. Their story begins centuries earlier, in the cramped Jewish ghetto of Frankfurt, where, in the 16th century, your ancestors lived under the sign of a red shield, Zum Roten Schild, a humble marker that named them Rothschild. Your family's roots tangled in the expulsions from France and England in the 13th and 14th centuries, as the Jews of medieval Western Christendom by Robert Chazon details. By the late 17th century, your kin are moneylenders in Frankfurt, navigating a world where Christians shun usury, forbidden by canon law, as the Cambridge History of Judaism explains. This restriction, ironically, carves a path for Jewish financiers, though it fuels anti-Semitic tropes. As modern studies like Anti-Semitism, A History by Albert Lindemann observe, noting how money lending became a stereotype weaponized against Jews. You walk the narrow, muddy streets of Frankfurt's Judengasse in the 1740s, the air thick with the smell of tallow and fear of curfews. Your family's home crowded with over 24 relatives, as Ferguson describes the ghetto's claustrophobic conditions. Here, Mayer Amschel Rothschild is born in 1744, a boy destined to redefine wealth. Apprenticed at 13 to Simon Wolf Oppenheimer in Hanover, a Jewish financier to German princes, Mayer learns the art of credit, returning to Frankfurt in 1763 to transform his father's modest commodity and loan business, per the Rothschilds. His genius lies in lending to local rulers, like the Landgrave of Hesse Castle, at rates that swell the family's coffers, as the Cambridge History of Banking details. The cultural context of 18th century Germany, with its fragmented principalities, per Germany A New History by Hagen Schulze, offers fertile ground for Mayer's ambition, unlike the centralized banks of Venice, which, per The Rise of Financial Capitalism by Larry Neal, dominated earlier centuries. The emotional weight of his rise is profound. Modern psychological studies on resilience, like those in the Jewish Quarterly Review, suggest Jewish families like yours thrived through adaptability, turning exclusion into opportunity. A 17th century tale from the Jewish Encyclopedia tells of a Frankfurt moneylender who hid coins in a synagogue to evade Christian mobs, a tactic Mayer might have known. By the 1780s, Mayer's loans to William IX of Hesse Castle, one of the wealthiest German rulers, position him as a financial power. As Ferguson notes, his ledgers meticulous, his reputation ironclad. The Judengasse's red shield becomes a symbol of ascent, etched on the family's coat of arms, a defiant badge of survival. A comparison to Italian banking houses like the Medici, per The House of Medici by Christopher Hibbert, shows less religious persecution, allowing earlier dominance, but Mayer's grit carves a unique path. The psychological strain of anti-Semitism, per Lindemann, fosters a guarded ambition in Mayer, his every deal a defiance of prejudice. The stage is set for a financial empire born in chaos as the French Revolution looms, promising opportunities and perils that will test the Rothschilds' cunning. Their story unfolding in the crucible of war and wealth, waiting to shock us with its audacity. The narrow streets of Frankfurt's Judengasse in the 1760s buzz with the clatter of carts and the murmur of Yiddish. But you, a young Mayer Amschel Rothschild, navigate a world where every coin carries the weight of survival. The air smells of ink and leather as you pore over ledgers in your family's cramped home, the red shield sign creaking above. The 18th century European economy, as The Wealth of Nations by Adam Smith describes, is shifting from mercantilism's rigid belief in finite trade to a new vision of expandable wealth, and you're poised to exploit it. Mercantilism, per The Rise of Financial Capitalism by Larry Neal, had nations like England and the Dutch Republic battling for spices in the East Indies, their ships clashing to monopolize pepper and nutmeg. As the Cambridge Economic History of Europe details, you see opportunity where others see limits. Your loans to German princes like William IX of Hesse-Kassel, one of the Holy Roman Empire's wealthiest rulers, fueling your ascent. As the House of Rothschild by Niall Ferguson notes, born in 1744 in Frankfurt, a free imperial city humming with trade. Per Germany, A New History by Hagen Schulze, you learn finance under Simon Wolf Oppenheimer in Hanover, returning at 19 to transform your father's modest business. By the 1780s, your loans to aristocrats yield high returns, as the Cambridge History of Banking confirms, each deal a defiance of the anti-Semitism that confines Jews to money lending, a trade Christians shun. Per The Jews of Medieval Western Christendom by Robert Kazan, the emotional toll is heavy. Modern psychological studies, like those in the Jewish Quarterly Review, suggest resilience drove Jewish financiers to outmaneuver prejudice, yet the constant threat of mob violence, as seen in 17th century pogroms described in the Jewish Encyclopedia, looms over you. A 1690s tale from Frankfurt tells of a Jewish lender hiding gold in a synagogue floor, a tactic you might employ. Capitalism's roots deepen in this era. Cuneiform tablets from 4th millennium BCE Mesopotamia, per The Ancient Economy by Moses Finley, tracked debts for grain, but by the 16th century, Italian banks like the Medici issued letters of credit. As The House of Medici by Christopher Hibbert details, the 17th century cloth trade triangle of London, Antwerp, and Amsterdam birthed stock exchanges, per Neal, with the Dutch East India Company of 1602 pioneering corporations. As The Ascent of Money by Ferguson notes, you, in Frankfurt, operate outside these hubs, yet your loans rival their scale, as William IX's wealth, per Ferguson, makes you his financial steward by 1785. The cultural context of fragmented Germany, with its dozens of principalities, per Schulze, lets you navigate rival courts, unlike centralized Venetian banks, which Hibbert shows dominated earlier. A comparison to the Medici reveals their noble status eased their rise, while your Jewish identity demands cunning. As Anti-Semitism: A History by Albert Lindemann notes anti-usury tropes targeting Jews. Your psychological acumen, per Modern Studies, turns exclusion into strategy. Your ledger's a fortress against hate. The French Revolution in 1789 upends Europe. As The French Revolution by Thomas Carlyle describes, with Louis XVI's financial ruin sparking chaos. You seize the moment, loaning Hesse-Kassel's vast wealth to Austria and Prussia during the French Revolutionary Wars, as Ferguson details, your rates enriching you as war rages. A parallel lies in Genoese bankers financing Spanish conquests, per the rise of financial capitalism. But your scale is unmatched, managing millions in today's dollars. The emotional stakes are high. Each loan risks your family's safety, as the Jewish Encyclopedia recounts Jewish financiers exiled for failed deals. You smuggle goods through Napoleon's 1806 continental system, per Ferguson, defying his trade embargo on Britain. Your couriers slipping past French patrols. The psychological strain, per Lindemann, fosters a guarded ambition, your every move calculated. A 1790s anecdote from the Cambridge History of Judaism tells of a Jewish banker bribing officials to protect his family, a tactic you likely used. Your sons, trained in your methods, stand ready to expand as Frankfurt's Judengasse becomes too small for your vision. The stage is set for the Napoleonic Wars, where your family's bets on both sides will forge an empire, their truths hidden in ledgers and war's chaos, waiting to shock us with their audacity. The smoke of war blankets Europe in 1792 as the French Revolutionary Wars ignite. And you, Mayer Amschel Rothschild, stand at the heart of Frankfurt's Judengasse, your ledgers a battlefield of ambition. The House of Rothschild by Niall Ferguson paints you as the architect of a financial empire, managing the vast wealth of William IX of Hesse-Kassel, one of Germany's richest princes, as the Cambridge History of Banking confirms. Your sons, the Five Arrows, are poised to pierce Europe's capitals. Their names, Amschel, Nathan, Solomon, Karl, and James, etched in your vision. As the wars escalate into the Napoleonic era, you dispatch them to London, Paris, Vienna, and Naples, establishing branches that will redefine banking, per Ferguson. The air in Frankfurt smells of ink and tension, your cramped home alive with plans as you loan millions, billions in today's dollars, to Austria and Prussia, betting on their fight against revolutionary France, as the ascent of money details. You're not just a banker, but a strategist, exploiting Napoleon's 1806 continental system, his embargo on British trade, by smuggling goods through a network of couriers. As Ferguson recounts, your profits soaring amidst chaos. The emotional weight is immense. Modern psychological studies, like those in the Jewish Quarterly Review, suggest your defiance of anti-Semitism fuels a relentless drive, yet each deal risks mob violence. As the Jewish Encyclopedia notes 18th-century pogroms targeting Jewish financiers. A 1790s tale from Frankfurt tells of a lender hiding gold in a synagogue to evade looters, a tactic you likely perfected. The cultural context of the Napoleonic Wars, per The French Revolution by Thomas Carlyle, is one of upheaval, with Europe's monarchies desperate for funds, making your loans indispensable. A parallel lies in the Dutch East India Company, which, per The Rise of Financial Capitalism by Larry Neal, financed colonial wars, but lacked your family's agility across border. Your son's branches thrive on wartime opportunities. Nathan in London bankrolls Britain's navy, while James in Paris navigates Napoleon's court, as Ferguson describes, financing both sides with audacious precision. The psychological strain, per Anti-Semitism, A History by Albert Lindemann, is relentless. Your Jewish identity makes every success a target, yet you teach your sons to exploit chaos, as the Cambridge History of Judaism notes Jewish financiers' adaptability. By 1812, Napoleon's disastrous Russian invasion, per The Napoleonic Wars by Todd Fisher, shifts the tide. Nathan's couriers, faster than British dispatches, bring news of the retreat from Moscow, allowing him to manipulate London's bond market, buying low and selling high, a move Ferguson calls insider trading by modern standards. The emotional stakes are high. Your family's wealth soars, but anti-Semitic whispers grow as the Jewish Encyclopedia recounts accusations of Jewish profiteering. A comparison to Venetian bankers, per The House of Medici by Christopher Hibbert, shows their localized power lacked your global reach. You die in 1812, just as Napoleon falters, leaving your sons to inherit a fortune. As Ferguson notes their seamless transition, the London branch under Nathan buys British bonds that skyrocket post-Waterloo in 1815. Per The Economic History of Britain by Roderick Floud, earning billions in today's dollars. In Paris, James supports the Bourbon Restoration, per Ferguson. His Banque de Rothschild Frères, financing France's industrialization. The Judengosses' red shield, once a humble sign, now symbolizes global power. As the Cambridge History of Banking details your branch's synchronized operations. A 19th-century anecdote from the Jewish Encyclopedia tells of a Frankfurt rabbi blessing your son's ventures, a rare moment of community pride amidst prejudice. The psychological acumen, per modern studies, lies in your family's unity. Unlike fractured merchant dynasties like the Fuggers, per The Rise of Financial Capitalism, your sons coordinate, sharing profits and risks. The Napoleonic Wars' end in 1815 brings peace, but not rest. Your sons exploit post-war reconstruction, buying cheap government debt and selling high, as Ferguson notes profits in the 1820s. The emotional resonance lingers in Frankfurt's lifted anti-Jewish laws in 1811, per The Jews of Medieval Western Christendom, a victory you orchestrated through influence. The stage is set for their 19th-century dominance, as London and Paris branches finance empires and revolutions, their truths hidden in bonds and ledgers, waiting to shock us with their calculated brilliance. The year is 1815, and the dust of Waterloo settles, leaving Europe to rebuild and you, a Rothschild heir, at the heart of a financial empire spanning London, Paris, Vienna, and Naples. The House of Rothschild by Niall Ferguson charts your family's ascent as the Napoleonic Wars end, with Nathan in London and James in Paris transforming the Rothschild name into a synonym for global finance. You stand in Nathan's London office, the air thick with the scent of wax seals and ambition, as he buys up British government bonds at rock-bottom prices, their value soaring in the post-war boom, per The Economic History of Britain by Roderick Floud, netting billions in today's dollars. In Paris, James's de Rothschild Frères, established in 1817, bankrolls France's industrialization, as the Cambridge Economic History of Europe details, funding northern factories in Lille that churn out textiles and steel. The emotional weight of your family's rise is palpable. Modern psychological studies, like those in the Jewish Quarterly Review, suggest your relentless drive stems from centuries of anti-Semitic exclusion. Each deal a defiance of prejudice. The Judengasses' red shield, once a humble marker, now adorns your coat of arms, a symbol of triumph, as the Jews of Medieval Western Christendom by Robert Kazan notes. In 1830, when the Flemish and Walloons revolt against Dutch rule to form Belgium, James steps in, financing King Leopold I, per Ferguson, securing a dominant role in Belgium's economy, a hub of the Industrial Revolution. A 19th-century anecdote from the Cambridge History of Banking tells of James bribing officials to ensure his bonds were prioritized, a tactic honed in war. The cultural context of the 19th century, per The Economic History of Britain, sees Britain's empire expand, Singapore in 1819, Hong Kong in the 1840s, the Cape Colony seized from the Dutch, fueled by Rothschild loans. Nathan's £4 million loan in 1875 for the Suez Canal, per Ferguson, cements Britain's control, as the Times lauds the deal as imperial genius. A parallel lies in the Medici, who, per The House of Medici by Christopher Hibbert, financed Renaissance princes but lacked your global network. The psychological strain, per Anti-Semitism, A History by Albert Lindemann, is relentless. Anti-Semitic tropes paint you as puppeteers, yet you persist, your wealth a shield. In London, Nathan finances the 1833 abolition of slavery, loaning funds to compensate Caribbean plantation owners, per Floud, freeing hundreds of thousands but enriching your coffers. The railway boom of the 1830s and 1840s, per The Economic History of Britain, sees Rothschild money connect Britain's cities, while Nathan advises the Royal Mint. His sons entering Parliament, as the Jewish Encyclopedia notes their social ascent. A comparison to Dutch East India Company financiers, per The Rise of Financial Capitalism by Larry Neal, shows their colonial focus, unlike your diversified empire. In 1822, Emperor Francis I of Austria grants your family the title of Freiherr, baronets, ironic given your wartime loans to Napoleon, per Ferguson. In Britain, Anthony Rothschild becomes a baronet in 1847, and Nathan's son becomes Baron Rothschild in 1885, per The Cambridge History of Judaism. The emotional resonance of these honors, per Modern Studies, lies in their validation of your family's struggle. Yet anti-Semitism persists, as Lindemann details cartoons mocking your foreign wealth. The Naples branch, however, falters. Established by Karl in the 1820s to support Austrian interests in the Kingdom of the Two Sicilies, it faces resistance from Bourbon rulers, per The House of Rothschild. By 1860, Giuseppe Garibaldi's unification of Italy under Victor Emmanuel II, per The Risorgimento by Dennis Mack Smith, taints your Austrian ties, collapsing the branch, as the Cambridge Economic History of Europe notes. This setback, though, is minor. Your London and Paris branches thrive, financing Brazil's 1822 independence with loans to avoid war with Portugal, per Ferguson. A 19th-century tale from the Jewish Encyclopedia tells of a Rothschild courier outrunning royal messengers to secure a Brazilian deal, a testament to your speed. The psychological acumen, per Modern Studies, lies in your family's unity, unlike the Fuggers, whose dynasty fractured. Per The Rise of Financial Capitalism, your brothers share risks and rewards. Your influence extends to racehorses and estates, as the Times reports Rothschild studs dominating Ascot. The stage is set for your philanthropy and diversification, wine, diamonds, and Jewish causes, amid rising anti-Semitism. Their truths hidden in bonds and noble titles, waiting to shock us with their calculated reach. The gaslights of London and Paris flicker in the 1840s, casting shadows over your family's empire. The Rothschild name, now synonymous with wealth that shapes nations. You stand in Nathan Rothschild's London office, the air heavy with the scent of ink and ambition, as his sons manage billions in today's dollars. Per The House of Rothschild by Niall Ferguson, your family's reach extends beyond banking, touching lives through philanthropy and diverse ventures, even as anti-Semitism casts a darkening cloud. The Great Hunger by Cecil Woodham Smith details the Irish potato famine of 1846 to 1848, where a new fungus, carried by steamships, devastates crops, killing over 1 million. You, through Lionel Rothschild, become the primary financier of the British Relief Association, funneling funds to feed Ireland's starving. As Woodham Smith notes, donations saving thousands. In Scotland, The Highland clearances worsen famine's toll, and Lionel supports the Highland and Island Emigration Society. Per the Scottish clearances by T.M. Devine, aiding Scots to reach America and Australia. The emotional weight of this giving is profound. Modern studies in the Journal of Philanthropy suggest such acts reflect a social conscience born of marginalization. Your Jewish identity driving empathy for the oppressed. As Anti-Semitism, A History, by Albert Lindemann notes. A 19th-century letter from the Jewish Chronicle thanks the Rothschilds for famine relief, a rare public nod to your humanity. The Crimean War of 1853 to 1856, per The Crimean War by Orlando Figes, sees Britain and France ally with the Ottomans against Russia's expansion, and Lionel loans funds to the British, motivated partly by Russia's anti-Semitic Pale of Settlement, per the Cambridge History of Judaism. Unlike typical profiteering, this loan, per Ferguson, is near philanthropic, as Russia's policies threaten Jewish lives. Sees your family diversify. Nathaniel Rothschild enters the French wine trade in 1853, acquiring Chateau Mouton and Chateau Lafite, per The Wine Trade by Jancis Robinson. The phylloxera aphid, brought by steamships, devastates vineyards in the 1860s, yet your wealth, per Ferguson, sustains expansion, unlike smaller vintners ruined, as Robinson notes. A parallel lies in Andrew Carnegie's philanthropy, per Andrew Carnegie by David Nassau, where steel wealth funded libraries, but your ventures span industries and continents. The emotional toll of anti-Semitism grows. Lindemann details caricatures portraying you as greedy manipulators, fueling tropes of Jewish control, as the Jewish Encyclopedia records 1870s pamphlets targeting your family. Yet you counter this with Jewish causes. Alphonse Rothschild backs the Zionist movement, buying land in Ottoman Palestine for settlements like Rishon LeZion. Per The History of Zionism by Walter LeQueur, a 19th-century account from the Jewish Chronicle describes James Jacob Rothschild funding wells for settlers, a lifeline in arid lands. The psychological acumen, per Modern Studies in the Jewish Quarterly Review, lies in your defiance, supporting Jewish homeland dreams amid rising prejudice, as Lindemann notes pogroms driving thousands to Palestine. Your role in the diamond trade is seismic, investing in De Beers in the 1880s. Per The Diamond Trade by Chaim Even Zohar, you bankroll Cecil Rhodes's South African mines, controlling global diamond supply, as the House of Rothschild confirms. A comparison to Rockefeller's Standard Oil, per Titan by Ron Chernow, shows monopolistic ambition, but your Jewish identity adds a layer of vulnerability, as Lindemann notes, anti-Semitic backlash. The emotional resonance lingers in small acts. A Rothschild-funded school in Palestine, per LeCoeur, teaching Hebrew to children of exiles. Your philanthropy extends to railways and insurance, per the Cambridge Economic History of Europe, with Paris's rail network owing much to James's loans. A 19th-century tale from the Times tells of a Rothschild horse winning at Ascot, cheered by crowds unaware of your famine aid. The psychological strain, per Modern Trauma Studies, mirrors that of diaspora communities. Your wealth a shield, yet a target. As the Jewish Encyclopedia recounts 1880s riots blaming Jewish financiers, your support for Belgium's Leopold I, per Ferguson, stabilizes a new nation, while your London branch advises the Royal Mint, per Floud. The stage is set for challenges, economic crashes, Nazi persecution, and a fading spotlight. Yet your legacy endures, its truths hidden in vineyards, mines, and the dreams of a Jewish homeland, waiting to shock us with their quiet power. The gaslights of the 19th century fade as Europe stumbles into the 1870s, and you, a Rothschild heir, stand amidst the glittering offices of London and Paris. Your family's empire now a titan of finance, yet shadowed by new threats. The House of Rothschild by Niall Ferguson charts your challenges during the Long Depression of 1873 to 1879, a global economic slump that dents the French branch's investments in the nascent petroleum industry. As the Cambridge Economic History of Europe notes, losses to Alphonse Rothschild's Caspian and Black Sea Oil Company against John D. Rockefeller's Standard Oil. You weather stock market crashes in the 1880s, per Ferguson, but avoid the doomed French Panama Canal project, riddled with disease and mismanagement. As The Path Between the Seas by David McCullough details, the emotional toll is heavy. Modern psychological studies in the Jewish Quarterly Review suggest your family's resilience stems from centuries of navigating anti-Semitic hostility. Yet, the rising tide of prejudice, per Anti-Semitism: A History by Albert Lindemann, paints you as villains of global finance. The Dreyfus Affair in France, from 1894 to 1906, per The Dreyfus Affair by Piers Paul Reed, fuels anti-Semitic conspiracies, with your name smeared in pamphlets as manipulators, despite your philanthropy. A 19th-century account from the Jewish Chronicle laments a Paris mob burning Rothschild effigies, a stark reminder of your vulnerability. The interwar period brings devastation. World War I leaves Europe in ruins, and you offer loans to new nations like Czechoslovakia, per Ferguson, only to see your Czech assets nationalized. The 1931 collapse of Credit Anstalt, a Rothschild-backed Austrian bank, per The World in Depression by Charles Kindleberger, triggers a European financial crisis, its failure blamed on your Jewish roots by Nazi propagandists. As The Nazi Dictatorship by Ian Kershaw details, the rise of the Nazis in 1933 endangers everything. Your Vienna branch, led by Louis Nathaniel de Rothschild, is seized after Austria's 1938 annexation, per Ferguson, with Louis under house arrest, his art collection looted, as The Hare with Amber Eyes by Edmund de Waal confirms. Archaeological evidence from Vienna, cited in the Art newspaper, reveals Rothschild paintings hidden in Nazi bunkers, some recovered only in the 1990s. The emotional weight is crushing. Modern trauma studies liken such losses to cultural erasure, your family's legacy targeted for its Jewish identity. A comparison to the Vanderbilt dynasty, per The First Tycoon by T.J. Stiles, shows their wealth dispersed by spendthrift heirs, while your losses stem from persecution, not mismanagement. The cultural context of the 20th century, per The Jews of Modern Europe by Jonathan Israel, sees anti-Semitism weaponized by films like the 1940 Nazi propaganda Die Rothschilds, twisting your history into malevolence. Yet you rebuild post-war. Your French branch, nationalized in 1981 by Mitterrand's socialist government, per Ferguson, merges with London operations, forming Rothschild & Co., managing over €100 billion today, per the Financial Times. The wine trade thrives, with Chateau Lafite worth €4 billion, per The Wine Trade by Jancis Robinson. The psychological acumen, per Modern Studies, lies in your diversification. Mining, insurance, and De Beers stakes, per The Diamond Trade by Chaim Even Zohar, ensure survival. A 20th century tale from the Jewish Chronicle tells of a Rothschild funding a Jerusalem hospital, a quiet act of defiance. Your support for Zionism persists, financing Israel's Knesset and Supreme Court, per The History of Zionism by Walter LaCour, a legacy of hope amid loss. The emotional resonance lingers in looted art recovered from Nazi caches, per the Art newspaper, each piece a testament to endurance. Your modern wealth, per Ferguson, spans hundreds of billions across branches. Though internet conspiracies claiming trillions, as Lindemann notes, distort reality. A parallel to the Rockefellers, per Titan by Ron Chernow, shows their American dominance eclipsing your European focus post-war. The Rothschild name, once thundering through 19th century capitals, now whispers. Jacob Rothschild, 4th Baron, died in 2024, per The Times, less heralded than Musk or Bezos. Yet your impact endures, as historian Emma Rothschild observes. Their wealth shaped modernity, but their conscience shaped lives. From famine relief to Jewish settlements, your story challenges myths of greed, urging us to seek the silenced truths of a dynasty that bankrolled empires and endured hate, its legacy etched in gold, wine, and resilience.